On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk terms and conditions, Jetbuilt goes global, and Lutron's tiny house. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
This is ResiWeek, episode 369, all about presentation. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, we're pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Katye McGregor-Bennett. She's the president of KMB Communications. How you doing, Katye?
I'm doing great. Thanks. You know, as a new company name, that whole KMB, you know.
Stop it.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I've known you forever, like most people that are on the show, but I'm in that anchorman mode of if it's on the text, we read it and it's fine. And as I moved the window slightly, it brought out the preferences pages and blocked the title of your company.
Cool.
So
that's
just
very helpful.
My apologies. Next, we have my good friend, Paul Dexter. He's the founder of Jetbuilt, who we've totally met multiple times before. How you doing, Paul?
Yes, we have totally met. Yes. Our people tell us we have. Just kidding.
We have, which makes it true. Mm-hmm. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to kick today off with one of my favorite topics. This comes to us from CE Pro. Is your business fully protected? Probably not, which is a very polite way to say 100% no, you are not protected. Without terms and conditions agreements in place, integrators could be liable from costs from cyber attacks or even late product deliveries. Great article from Richard Frank here covering a bunch of different things. But specifically, there's a couple of real world situations that he mentions. A Cali integrator that had a client's network hacked and they wanted compensation for that. A Florida integrator who was blamed because their client's new $50,000 custom door didn't work with the smart locks. There's a shock. And a New York integrator who was held responsible for the cost of delays caused by equipment not showing up on time. So read through the article. It covers a lot of really good things and some key provisions and terms, as well as important forms to include. Katye, I want to start with you on this. I appreciate what Richard wrote here. And I really appreciate that he's giving some real world examples of what you should do, et cetera, et cetera. I will fully disclose that I come from a family of lawyers, and we have probably more legalese than most. Writing this yourself or using LegalZoom or something like that is great. Having a real world business liability lawyer or firm look at this for you is better. What do you need to do as an integrator, as a marketer, to make sure that you're doing the best you can to protect yourself?
So a few things. And unlike you, there's nobody in legal profession in my family, and I am not a lawyer and I do not claim to be one. And everything I say here is basically just my opinion, right? Okay. We've put that stipulation out there.
That's a very good legalese right there. I like it.
Yeah. So I have that on a script, Matt. It's up on my script. Yeah. No, I don't. But no, my opinion on the matter is this is akin to making sure that you've got a primary care doctor, not because you're going to need to go to the doctor every day or very frequently, we all hope, but you want to be in the system and you want to have a professional ready to go when you do have a need. So I absolutely apply that to the legal profession. And I think that every business needs to have a legal counsel that they're established, air quote, in the system, so that you're not scrambling to find the right party when the scenarios do come up. And notice I said when, not if they do come up, because they will come up. And it's just a matter of how fast you can respond. May indicate the outcome being either more or less in your favor. So, I think with all businesses, you need to have all the right professionals in your court and have them ready to go when you need them. So I would absolutely. And then I think you also need to take a really good close look at the services that you're providing and making sure that you've got the right language in place on all of your contracts, your proposals, your estimates, any communications that are going out to a potential prospect. Make sure that language is digestible. There's two things. Matt mentioned legalese and having a lot of it, and that's great for those who understand legalese, but most common consumers don't. So, make sure that it is a digestible conversation that you're having when it is direct lining to where liability falls when something goes south. And the lock in the door, that's a perfect scenario. How many smart locks are we installing right now? And now smart doors are coming into play. I mean, it's all over coming out of CES, the Masonite, that door I think has gotten more promotion, and I'm a huge fan. So, those little things where you wouldn't necessarily be thinking about it at the outset of a project, you need to start thinking about this a little bit more deeply as more and more products are being connected. And I would even throw that more and more heavy usage products that may have a bigger implication on the life cycle of your clients, as vehicles become more autonomous and driving on their own, there's additional advancements in technology that are outside of the home space that we need to make sure we're covering. When it comes into the home, what happens next? So long-winded way of saying it, but I 100% agree. Absolutely, you got to have coverage in place.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The only thing I'll push back on you with this, I don't care if my customers can understand the terms and conditions at all. That is on them.
True,
I want it to cover us as much as humanly possible. And if you want a great example, call up ADT and get a contract from them. Don't sign it. I'm not encouraging you to sign it, but go get one and read it, because it is shocking. They cover nothing. It is phenomenal. Paul,
good point.
One of the pushbacks I get, and we were talking pre-show, again, I come from a family of lawyers. Every time I've had an issue in my own company where there's a dispute that goes a little bit beyond just we'll solve that, no problem. The second I say, yeah, sure, I'll forward this to our lawyers and they'll get back to you. With the exception of 2 instances, that has stopped that conversation instantly. Now, my lawyers are also corporate commercial lawyers. They're not, somebody who does real estate. How important is it to, we vet our vendors all the time. How important is it to vet your lawyers, your accountants, all your professional services to make sure that they understand what it is that we do?
Boy, didn't expect that question. I was going to comment on the general story.
Sorry, I spun it a little bit.
Yeah, you sure did. No, that's really interesting. Clearly, vetting the people that are, it's no different than vetting employee, potential hires and subcontractors and or vetting clients, right? I didn't learn to vet clients until years in, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, if a client has a checkbook and they need a system, I'm going to give them a price. Then I start realizing, oh yeah, that's not a client based on, a friend of mine who may have done some work for them. And that's a client I may need to be careful about or go in with a different kind of tactic. And then 100% when it comes to the people you work for. Like, I don't have lawyers in my family. My dad was always like, he wouldn't work for a lawyer as a client. And so I had this weird taste of vendors until they became a lot of my good friends are lawyers now. And I really respect their profession and their challenges. Right. There's some bad lawyers maybe, or some crazy lawyers that are causing some of the problems that we've got. But most of the lawyers are here to protect their clients, but also just maintain peace, right? Because a good lawyer will not just escalate to defend their client or me as the integrator in this case, but also to just provide peace for the situation, put the fire out, right? And so for that respect, I think that there are a lot of good choices of finding those. I think I'm answering your question kind of in the sense of if you're looking for a lawyer, if you're looking for help in these areas. And I admit that when I was integrating, I had a LegalZoom style TNC from my company. And we did solid work. We stayed out of there was never a complaint bigger than we couldn't just resolve. So it never grew out of that. And we were doing some fairly large scale commercial projects with crazy liability issues of thousands of pounds of speakers and lighting hanging over heads and so forth. But all of it can be resolved within reason, I guess is my point, right? Yeah. So 1000% to Katie's recommendation of you absolutely need to be secure. You absolutely need to be protected. On the other hand, you have to couple that with doing the right job, right? And serving your client before they say, why is this screwed up? And you owe us this. If you're proactive, I think this in all of life, if you're proactive, you're staying out of trouble, right? Do the right job, do the right work, do your job to make sure you got the right smart lock, and so forth. It keeps you out of illegal trouble. Have it in your pocket, like you said, have it ready to go like your primary care physician. But going in legal, oddly enough, I'm dealing with an issue today. Someone who started legal. This is just a dumb little employment issue, but they start legal. Like, why do you start at 11? Let's start at 1. Let's start with, hey, I thought it meant that. You always start there rather than, let's start calling lawyers. That's always my pushback. That was my dad's pushback, right? Yeah. And so I'm not sure if I answered your question or I just answered the question I wanted to answer.
No, it's that's fantastic. All right, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Jetbuilt expands with a global market in mind. Jonathan Brecken-Rowe joins the company to lead business development and customer relations in EMEA. Obviously, it's great that Paul is here to speak to this a little bit. But long and short, if you haven't been following along, Jetbuilt has been moving globally and continues to expand on that, bringing in Jonathan to, as I aforementioned, work in EMEA. Paul, tell us a little bit more about, the move into global, which obviously you guys started a while ago, but you continue to push into that, and where it's going from there.
Yeah, I think, and as in full disclosure, some of this really applies to commercial integrators, of which I know there are so many that are both. Obviously, a lot of Jetbuilt clients do a lot of both, but it's probably understood that more commercial integrators have offices around the world than residential integrators, right? And that isn't to say anything about either one, but we know a few that are residential players that'll have an office in London and New York, or London and LA. But by and large, it's the large commercial integrators that do more of that. So a lot of this story really does serve for the commercial folks who struggle with those international situations, not just particular laws. We were talking about this before the show. For example, Canada, there are so many odd, unique rules and tax codes and procurement. Simple purchasing. Everything is different. You guys aren't just nicer people. You also do things differently. And, but so it's taken Jetbuilt years to understand and learn those. And then of course with Europe, and in Europe, so many countries that operate differently in such a tight area, every one of the ISE shows, the international shows, will do. I stay after a week or two and I visit integrators in these different countries. Like this last after ISE was in Switzerland and Germany, and visiting integrators to learn what is it about this thing that makes that be taxed this way, and why is it about that makes this work that way, and why is this thing bought direct this thing through this. There's so many different things than the way we operate here. So this global campaign is could be conceived as Jetbuilt's just trying to grow globally. That's not really the story. The story is understanding and learning this global market, because it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge for quoting platforms like ours, but it's a big challenge for integrators that work in multiple markets, right? And so many of our integrators work in these multiple markets, and projects need to be collaborated on between offices, perhaps because maybe you have all your engineers in one state or country, but the sales teams are in other countries and fulfillment. So that's really the story. The story is about us understanding and learning. That's why we hired guys like Jonathan in England who understand. And he was with Kramer for a long, long time there and grew their business there. So it's for us gaining boots on the ground, as well as just big understanding through visits and this growth to hopefully help serve this global market, because the world is shrinking. I mean, it continues to do so, and it's doing so at a faster and faster pace, I feel, even from 10 years ago.
That's a really good point. All right, let's change topics for a second. This also comes to us from Residential Systems. Lutron debuts its tiny home experience at Lightapalooza down in Phoenix, or Glendale, I should say, at the Renaissance Hotel and Spa. What they did, if you weren't following social at all, is they brought a 400 square foot tiny home, set it up outside, and it was a complete demo experience there. Katie, you were on site with this, so I want to start with you on this one. How effective was it? And I haven't been to Lightapalooza, but I've been to a couple of their other events, and it's mostly a tabletop show. And I don't mean that in any way other than it's a tabletop show, just like when Cedia does their roadshow, right? It's a tabletop show. There's a couple things that can be demoed, but it's a tabletop show. It is what it is. What did it mean, and what was the experience of Lutron bringing the tiny home and having those dealers, those integrators, being able to walk through that experience?
So a couple of things. For the first time in the history of ever, I'm actually going to disagree with you, because that never happens. But actually, this isn't a tabletop show. So this was big light bulb moment.
Oh wow!
Did there? It's not Lightapalooza is no longer a tabletop show. This is a ballroom full of actual booths. Maybe one brand had a tabletop. So that was
pictures
the big
I saw looked like tabletop shows.
Yeah, no. So I mean,
that's not the story.
Actual booths. No, but it is important because it actually ties directly into is this was lighting manufacturers brought small versions of their booths, smaller versions that you would see in a KBIS, smaller versions of Lutron booths than you'd see at Cedia Expo. But it's the demo that is being provided in these booths that is absolutely changing the perspective. Now, over to the tiny home, this was one of my favorite demos of the entire show, and partly because it really put everything into perspective. And it's one thing to see a demo as part of a series of demos that are on the floor, and while you're seeing this brand go through their demonstration of their thing, you can't help but be distracted by people walking by lights over here in another booth. You're not getting a focused demo. In the tiny home that Lutron had, that Jesse Silva and the PAVE crew did, and I think we need to call out the work that Jesse has done on this, because this is a model that he's been developing, and it goes well beyond this tiny home and this single demo. There's a whole business model behind this that he's got cooking, that it really is bringing demo to where people are. And if you've heard me on this show before, I'm always really big on saying meet people where they are. And this is a way to get a demo that is really applicable and is really, really tangible. The way that Ketra demos anyways is really amazing. But being able to show within the home experience how daylight affects that room, or in the tiny home, the 3 rooms that are all very closely connected, you can see how daylight going through the course of the day really changes, and how every aspect of that kitchen, that sitting room, and the bedroom beyond it, you could actually see how that really impacted the light in the room and therefore your life. So it was one of the most impactful demos. Has it the first time it's ever been done? No. But the fact that this demo is being provided to others outside of our industry and outside of our vacuum, this is the thing that gets me really excited. And I cannot stress enough, we need to be doing this. I pulled 5 different short videos of just the Ketra demo of the different phases of this, put it on my Facebook, and just alerted my designer friends, take a look at this. This is why you need to know Ketra. But you can't have Ketra unless you go through an integrator. So it just further reinforces why the integration channel and the community is really important. So show the people what they want, but that they can't have unless there's an integrator involved, and we are winning. And this to me is like, the more that we can do this, and some people are doing full homes, that's awesome. this is a way to be a little bit smaller in scale, but still deliver a big experience. And I really, it's just, if we could get an integrator doing this in every market, we would see our community rising above. I mean, this makes it tangible. You can't have this from Home Depot, right? I mean, 4 cans and a fan man isn't going to make this happen for you, but an integrator will. And that's the story we need to be telling and what we need to be showing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Paul, we've debated on this show for years, the death and then the rebirth and then the death and then the rebirth, that never-ending life cycle of the dealer's showroom. And I've got integrator friends that have showrooms. I have ones that have quote unquote vignettes or little showrooms in a builder's home or a renovator's property or a partner's location. I've even got a few that have a trailer that they've outfitted that they can tow to a client's house, set up in front and let them walk inside and experience something. I think we're back to the point where the majority of technology that is really exciting has to be experienced, whether it's audio, video, lighting. I don't care. You can't explain to someone how awesome 8K video is unless they can actually see it in a controlled environment. And then they go, yeah, I totally need that. Are we back?
Right.
Has the industry bought back into the concept of the demo?
Yeah, I think it should be. I think that it's amazing. If I were still integrating today, I would 1000% have some sort of a trailer, motorhome, bus. I mean, a Sprinter's van's too small for the things I would want to do. Like I love this concept. We talked a little bit about, like, as a commercial integrator, I didn't have a showroom. And I shied away from like showing 5 variations of a PTZ camera to a client. I would usually just call 5 reps and say, these people want to see them all, do it. And I'll talk to them after you guys do all that, because I wasn't willing to go down that road. But having them in a facility, because it's all the setup every time, demoing and setting up. I mean, I remember needing to hear these particular community speakers to see if they would work on this football field. And the rep had to, lug this stuff around, set this stuff up, find this crazy parking lot, do this thing. That's a big example. But the point is, demoing stuff large and small, there's just so much setup to it. And the wow factor of some of this stuff and the lengthy time of pre-configuring it means having it in a go to the client, show up and show them all the wow stuff. And particularly with this thing with the shades, because it was outside, because the shades, like it was and that would be the same as a motorhome parked in front of a house, right? You've got the shades, you can demo the shades, you can demo how the sun affects it. You can, all that to say, 1000%. I always thought this idea of the showroom kind of being bygone was odd to me, because I thought it was so powerful in the residential market, particularly, right? Because in the residential market, the homeowners they're not getting trade publications, the way a lot of commercial AV, technical directors or whatever. They're at least seeing stuff. They're at least going to some shows. The homeowners aren't going to shows, and so they do need it brought to them. And I'm just a massive fan of this and the mobile showroom environment.
Let me ask you both this then. If an integrator doesn't want to, can't, whatever acronym you want to throw in there, if they can't justify or facilitate a large scale RV, right, or a towable, I think about some of our friends in the tri-state area, right? There's no way Feinberg is going to drive around Manhattan with a tiny home behind him. How do you do demos effectively? Because again, Paul, you were talking about, the time it takes to set it up, to tear it back down. I've had vendor reps come up to me and pitch me a suitcase full of outdoor speakers that I'm supposed to go to a client's house and stick in the ground and go, hey, look, this could be yours, right, in a terrible Wheel of Fortune type moment. No, wait, Price is Right? That'd be Price is Right. What do you do? Is there an effective middle ground?
it can still happen. I mean, frankly, again, if an integrator is worth their salt, and they care about the systems they do, they care, and they also care just simply about their own bottom line or top line. You're going to upsell by this experience, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to close more deals. You're going to close more of them, more money by showing off this stuff. So I don't think the cost should be a barrier. And, getting a used Sprinter van. And I would say, yeah, I know Manhattan seems like a bizarre place to pull around a trailer, but you can drive a Sprinter van around Manhattan, and you can put this thing the best you can in a Sprinter van, and you're pulling up in front of their brownstone or whatever it is, and they step inside that, they can see that 8K TV, and they can experience the shades, they can experience some lighting, they can experience the commands. And so I still believe it can happen. I don't think there's a urban environment too tight to be able to fit a Sprinter van into for this type of thing. If you want to be heads, I'm all about presentation. I'm always about presentation. I've sold more jobs over competitors that were probably better qualified and probably lesser expensive than me because my presentation was simply better. And I mean, okay, that sounds like I'm boasting. My point is the times I did win was the times my presentation was better. Maybe it wasn't always, right? But I felt like it was the presentation that won the projects the times I won it. So with that qualification. And so pulling up with this when everybody else pulls up in the Prius and shows them a bunch of pictures and shows them a bunch of websites and says, why don't you drive over there to Jersey where we got a showroom and you can do this and this and this. Yeah. It's like, no, the guy that shows them in a Sprinter van and shows them what this stuff can do. I still believe there's amazing power in that.
Yeah, from a marketing perspective. So, a couple things come to mind is that there are other showrooms. And this is something that is continuing to be built out, and there are other opportunities. Granted, it's not your work and it isn't your showroom, but manufacturers do have experience centers now popping up in more and more locations. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the larger metros. So, I myself am not in one of those, so that isn't something that I get to take advantage of, and I certainly understand others are in the same situation. But more and more manufacturers are getting involved either with their own experience center or showrooms, or they're partnering with others to make those available. So I think, it's kind of make sure that of the brands that you work with from the integrator's perspective is which ones have showrooms and that make those available to the outside. And then the other thing is, whether you have the means or not, as you look at your bank account, look at more of what the volume of your purchases stand for. You've heard me talk about this before, is there is a mechanism for getting funds from your manufacturers that you do volume with to secure funding for additional marketing activities. Marketing development funds are a great source of opportunity. So have that conversation. Most manufacturers that you're buying from directly will have this. It is volume based, but there are also special circumstances. So if you can put together a plan for an event or something that you want to do that's going to increase the visibility for your brand and therefore by extension theirs, put that proposal in front of them and see if they would be offering to pony up some additional funds for you to make that happen. As you look at that, what other brands or what other resources in your area might be good players in that? You're hearing more and more about integrators partnering with designers, partnering with lighting designers. So right there, you've got three parties that potentially could participate in the expense of a space, and all three of those parties would have a vested interest in it. So, we're looking at ways to align with the adjacent trades, as I call them, and this is a great opportunity to do it. Everyone needs somewhere to take their clients and show them the experience that they want to have, to curate that experience in order to get the projects you want. Don't just look at your own bank account. Look at your partners and how they might participate.
Let's leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining us. Paul, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Jetbuilt, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can go to jetbuilt.com, jetbuilt.com, or any other kind of major thing, and it'll probably work.
Excellent. Katie, if people want to connect with you, learn more about KMB, where can they do that?
Yeah, so you can follow KMB Communications all over the sphere. We're the one with the mountain in our logo. You can find me at Katye McGregor or Katye McGregor-Bennett across all the social handles. Excellent.
Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.